On the 3rd of June of the year 2014, Max Porter communicated with the police to report the disappearance of his sister, with whom all communication was cut off several days ago. The young man seemed very worried about the safety of his sister, especially since he knew that she had a problem with heroin addiction. At that time, Max informed investigators that his sister, she was last seen when she met a friend named Mallory, who noticed that she was not well at all and that she looked as if she was a bit ill. But these symptoms were not unusual for Mallory, who knew very well that her friend had an addiction problem and that she was trying to recover from that addiction, especially after her older brother Max intervened in the matter, who tried to motivate her with all his strength to quit using drugs. The biggest concern gripping Max and those close to Lea, especially those who knew very well that she had trouble with abuse, was that Lea, who was going through multiple psychological crises at the time, had harmed herself and her health by overdosing heroin. Lea's family and those close to her had the right to worry about this, as a heroin overdose is already able to end the girl's life within a few minutes. Max and Lea's close friends have therefore stepped up their efforts to find Lea and deliver medical aid to her as soon as possible. But can Max, who has taken it upon himself to find his sister, regardless of the police's efforts to search and find the girl? And if he can find her, will she still be alive? All those questions were wandering in Max's head, for whom Lea was more than just a sister, as she was a childhood companion who used to share everything in her life with her older brother. To find out the answer to all those questions, follow with us this episode presented to you by the Detective Channel, as we will track the steps of search and investigation, followed by investigators, and we will explain in detail Max's main role in deciphering the mystery that puzzled investigators for a long time. At first, Max explained to investigators that there was a special relationship between him and his sister Lea from the first day she was born 19 years ago, as Max from the beginning was very excited about the idea of having a younger sister, which made them very close friends later. As for Lea, Max became everything for her. He was an experienced older brother who passed on all his life experiences to her and soon became her best friend, especially since they both went to the same school and had the same friends. When Max graduated from high school, Lea had a void in her life that she would not be able to fill no matter how hard she tried. It was clear to her that her brother, who left home and school to go about his life after attending college to study medical massage, had left a void in her that she could not have imagined. As a result, Lea worked hard to get her brother into college, and she was already able to graduate from high school at a relatively good level, which allowed her to attend the same college as Max. The specialization was not important to Lea, who was only interested in being next to her best friend and brother Max. Everyone noticed that Lea became full of energy and vitality after her brother returned to her life again. But the good days were inevitably going to end. The age difference between Lea and Max meant that the girl had to part ways with her brother at some point. This time, it was different. Max left the state and was able to get a job in a place far from Lea University. At the same time, Lea had to deal with a problem, as at the time she was dealing with her emotional breakup with her lover Jesse Maine, who was 38 years old, which meant that he was about 20 years older than the teenage girl. Jesse was working as a tattoo artist, and naturally the young man had been involved in drugs for a long time, and soon Lea showed her desire to try the drugs that her lover was taking. And little by little, Lea became addicted to heroin in a way that made Jesse himself panic. Many of Lea's confidants noticed a change in her behavior in the period when she was taking drugs. Even her mother could not ignore that her daughter always looked tired and was falling asleep for long hours, contrary to her usually energetic and active nature. After Max moved to California because of his work, Lea in turn moved in with her lover Jesse, spending most of the time on drugs and completely neglecting her classes, causing her to be expelled from college afterwards without being able to get a degree. Lea's relationship with Jesse lasted for 6 months before the 30th young man got tired of that relationship and broke it off, which meant Lea had to leave his residence. After being fired from college, Lea had nowhere else to go, but she obviously decided to move to Denver. As a result, Lea posted a post on Facebook asking her friends and acquaintances who live in Denver to help her with the move, helping her find housing, work, or something else. At the same time, Lea admitted at the time about her drug addiction to her close friend Mallory, who noticed how her friend's condition had changed in the recent period and knew that something was wrong with her, but she was not sure of the real reason behind that pale look that had on Lee's face. In the recent period, Mallory advised her friend to stay away from abuse as soon as possible and to seek the help of specialists and experts. But it seems that Lee's psychological state at the time led her to ignore all but one of Mallory's advice, which requires Lea to seek the help of her close friend and hero who did not let her down by her brother Max. Max still remembers that long call between him and his sister, in which his little sister confessed the most dangerous secret she told him in her life. His little sister was addicted to heroin. Her older brother didn't find much to do about it. Of course, Max scolded her for this behavior, but he preferred not to over-scold her in order to maintain that frankness that existed between them. A few days after meeting Mallory, Lea told her that she was preparing to move to Denver after some friends promised to help. Lea disappeared from sight a few days later and was not answering the calls of her family and friends who showered her phone with messages and calls without answering. Investigators understood how serious it was, so a team of agents and cops immediately set out to search for Lea. At the same time, Lee's family assembled a team of volunteers to participate in the search for Lea. As for the police, they proceeded with a different source of investigation, and this path assumed criminal suspicion behind a disappearance, so investigators obtained a list of Lea acquaintances and those close to her in an attempt to build a list of suspects. And at the top of that list comes Jesse, her lover, from whom she separated just 2 days ago. Jesse for investigation. The young man explained to investigators that he had already ended his relationship with Lea before she went to Denver, and that their relationship was at its best. As the young man in his 30s wanted to quit using drugs, and he realized that he could not do so while he still lived with Lea in the same apartment. As a result, the duo agreed to separate, to stay with his mother for a while after he told them about his addiction and told them that he relies on them to help him quit the drugs that have been exhausted. Jesse also told investigators that although he broke up with Lea, he harbors no evil for her. Jesse explained to investigators that he met Lea for the last time before she left town, and that meeting took place in her hotel room on the road to the city of Denver that Lea intended to go. Jesse did not forget to point out to investigators that he was reassured about Lea's health and that she promised him that she too would receive help in quitting drugs from her friends in Denver. Jesse's name was quickly removed from the suspect list after investigators confirmed his account and that he had already been at his parents' house all the time trying to recover from drug use. Meanwhile, the name of another young man came to prominence and attracted the attention of investigators in particular. The new suspect was none other than 23-year-old Christopher Waide, who was studying at the police academy and preparing to become a police officer in just a few years. It was Lea's mother who brought Christophe's name to the investigation, as the woman was trying to track down her daughter through the Facebook app when she noticed unusual activity from Christophe on Lea's account. Christophe was in fact Lea and Max's schoolmate at school, but their relationship with him was superficial. Max and his mother were therefore astonished by Christophe's comments, suggesting that they had some kind of romantic relationship, and his family clarified to investigators their suspicions of Christophe. Investigators reached out to Christophe in order to question him. The young man, who was a U.S. Army soldier before he attended the police academy, confessed. The young man explained to investigators that he communicated with Lea through her Facebook post that she wanted to move to Denver. The former soldier lived in a town near Denver, and he communicated with the old friend to lend her a helping hand. And when she told him the truth about her drug addiction, Christopher offered Lea to be her patron. Hence, their relationship quickly deepened as Lea visited Christopher in his residence only once, after which they dined together and occupied their time a bit playing video games before Lea left in a white van after receiving a message on her phone, and that was the last time Christophe saw Lea. The investigators decided to investigate Christophe further after noticing for some reason that he was not telling them the whole truth. Investigators soon realized that Christophe had spent 2 years in the army working as a helicopter mechanic, but he did not leave the service to join the academy as he told investigators, but was dismissed from service due to his violent behavior and psychological disorders, which made the policemen focus more on Christophe, who became the main suspect in the case. Investigators were therefore able to obtain a warrant through which they were able to search Christophe's apartment, which was unlike anything they had seen before. The young man's apartment was very messy and dirty. The floor was covered with video game CDs, dirty clothes, empty drink bottles, and dirty dishes. The apartment smelled so dirty that the investigators were suffering during the search from that stench. That was not all, as the investigators also found clothes a woman's interior is scattered in Christophe's bedroom. And when the investigators asked him why the clothes were in his bedroom, he told them that he had bought them himself because he simply felt more comfortable wearing them. The investigators also found bloodstains on the wall that were wiped by a chemical liquid and also found a sharp knife, but they could not attach the knife or blood to Lea, as Christophe had cleaned it very carefully. When investigators searched Christopher's computer, they found in his search history extremely violent pornography, which meant that the young man had a psychological disorder related to sexual sadism, which increased the investigators' suspicions about Christophe, but they had no evidence against him. Christophe was called for interrogation again, along what the interrogators found in his apartment. Christophe stuck to his same version of events, but this time he added that Lea approached him, kissed him, and had sex with him before she left. The investigators tried to put pressure on Christophe, but he stuck to his statement and did not succumb to the pressure of the investigators, who found themselves they were forced to release him as they did not have any evidence against him. At the other end of the story, there was someone desperately trying to find out the truth, and this person was none other than Lea's brother Max, who lured Christophe to talk to him outside in the presence of a number of his friends hiding the tape recorder. Max tried to pressure Christophe repeatedly to find out the truth about what happened to his sister, but Christophe stuck to his story. Max did not despair of Christophe's constant quirks and kept assuring him that no matter how enormous what he told him, it would remain a secret between them. Max was eventually able to make Christophe feel good and start confessing. Christophe tried to make it look as if it was self-defense, as he explained to Max that Lea wanted to have sex violently, but apparently she had blended in too much and attacked Christophe with a knife. But with his military experience, he was able to avoid the attack and stab Lea, resulting in her death. Max handed over the recording to investigative authorities, who immediately moved to arrest Christophe, charged him with second-degree murder, and sentenced to 48 years in prison.